folks, today I'm going to be attempting to review and show you how to play a game called ShadowLord. This game was created in 1983 by Parker Brothers and it is for 2 to 4 players. I think this game came about during the height of the Dungeons & Dragons era because the rules of this game are fairly complicated and they're about 30 pages long. There's a lot of details with the rules and everything. Basically, the object of this game is you're trying to become the ruler of the galaxy, but there's a couple of things going against you. Number one is going to be the other players who are also trying to be the ruler of the galaxy, but the other thing is the ShadowLord and his minions. You're trying to basically win the game, but you're also trying to keep the ShadowLord from winning the game as well. So you're having to do a lot of bargaining with other players while you're trying to beat them at the same time. There's a lot of talking going around and a lot of strategy that you're trying to do with the other players along with against the other players as well. So without further ado, here's how to play. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce all the components to this game. First thing you have is you're going to have your character discs and your character or your rings here. The rings are basically where you're going to be putting your disc, which has different soldiers on it. These are the character cards. They're synonymous with these discs here, and there's 4 different classes of these cards right here, and I'll show you what they are. First card is your master card. This is the guy who's basically the king of your army. You do not want to lose this guy to battle. If you do, you're going to lose the game. He has a power of 8 to start with. You have the warrior. The warrior's main purpose is to fight. It has a power of 6 to start. You have the merchant. The merchant has a power of 3. Basically what the merchant will do is it will help you get extra spaceships. For each merchant that you have in your army, you'll be receiving 3 extra spaceships per turn. And finally, you have the diplomat. The diplomat does not fight or defend itself. Its main purpose is to try to recruit people into your army. And the way you're going to do that is by turning over these discs. You just have to move the diplomat into that spot, and then you'll be able to turn the disc over, and then you'll be able to see whether or not you want him into your army. You also have what is called the power cards. These have various numbers on them. Now you can use the power cards for a variety of things. If you have a power card you draw, you can place one of these power cards underneath one of your characters here. Now, if you place it under one of your characters, you will be able to use this card to attack or defend yourself. If you can also hold on to the card in your hand. If you decide to hold on to the card in your hand, if you decide to attack someone, you will be able to use these cards to help with an attack. However, if it's in your hand, you won't be able to use it to help defend yourself. You can also use these cards to bribe enemy characters to join your army. What you will do is if you have 4 of the same number, say you have 4 sevens, you will be able to play those 4 sevens, and then you can choose one of your enemies' soldiers to try to bribe. What will happen is you and your opponent will roll a die, and whoever gets the higher number will end up either keeping or getting that soldier for his side. Okay, now the way you are able to get people into your army is through the diplomat. Sigmund here that I have is a diplomat. So let's say I have a spaceship on him, so that allows me to move 1. Let's say I move over here. Now that I can turn over this disc. This disc says Faye, which is 3, so Faye is a merchant. So now I can decide whether or not I want to add Faye to my army. If I decide to add Faye to my army, I will simply just get a disc over here and then add Faye into my army like this. If I decide not to have Faye in my army, I can either trade it with another player for something, or I can just discard Faye out of the game entirely. So that's basically how the role of the diplomat works. The next thing we have are these things called spaceships. Spaceships have a few functions. One of the functions is going to allow you to move your character. In order to be able to move your character, you have to have some spaceships. The number of spaceships you have will tell you how many spots you will be able to move. So if you have, say, 3 spaceships, you will be allowed to move 3 spaces on the board. However, before you can actually move those 3 spaces, you have to have ownership of the galaxies. So for example, the way you're going to get ownership of a galaxy is, like, say I move this guy here, I'll have to put a spaceship down here to lay claim to this galaxy. So this will allow me to move through this galaxy if I decide to. So since I put one there, I can go 1 and 2. In order for me to go over here, I'm going to have to place a spaceship there on my next turn. Basically, my movement ends once I reach a galaxy that I do not have a spaceship on. I can also move through an opponent's galaxy as long as he gives me permission. Spaceships are also good during battle because if you have a spaceship, it's going to add a power of 1 to your original number. I just dropped 1. So for example, in this case, Axel has a power of 6, but with the 2 spaceships that he has, he now will have a power of 8. You can get extra spaceships if you own one of these 4 stations. So if you have a spaceship in one of these stations, you're going to be earning 3 extra spaceships per turn. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about are the Shadows. The Shadows are basically the army that everybody is trying to defeat. One of the things of this game is not only are you trying to become the Lord of the Universe, you're also trying to make sure that the ShadowLord does not win. And what happens is, as these deck gets depleted, and these go pretty quick, this power stone here is going to move down 1. If it gets all the way down to the bottom, the ShadowLord is going to win and the game is going to end. These things do not move unless the diplomat uncovers a disc that allows them to. So here's an example. Here's a disc that says Count Gwynth attacks. Let's say that Sigmund over there turns this over and it says Count Gwynth attacks right here. So what's going to happen is this is going to allow the shadow to move. So Count Gwynth is over here. So what's going to happen is Count Gwynth is going to get some spaceships. So what we'll do is we'll draw a power card to see how many he gets. He gets 4 spaceships. So I will put 4 spaceships on Count Gwynth like so. Now the way that this guy moves is during the player's turn. The player can move him 1 spot. He's here on the Lost Fortress. He can move him here, he can move him here, etc. A lot of the strategy is you can actually move a shadow into one of your opponent's spaces, and then the opponent is going to have to fight him. So at this point, Count Gwynth has a power of 10. Now again, the only way these guys can move is if the diplomat turns over one of these discs in the galaxies. Now I'm going to talk about the order of turn. There's 6 different things that you will be able to do here. On your turn, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to draw a power card. On top of the 1 power card that you will draw, you will also draw 1 power card for each ruin that you control. The ruins are the spaces with the planets that have the cities on top of them. So let's say I draw a power card. I can either place them underneath one of my characters to either use to attack or defend myself, or I can hold on to it in my hand. This will allow me to eventually maybe bribe a character. I can use this as an attack if I decide to attack an enemy, but I can't defend with it. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and put him under Randy, so I will have a power of 4 extra if I ever get attacked. That's the first thing that's going to happen. The next thing that's going to happen is I got to roll the dice and go to the special events. The special events are here on the back of the card. The dice basically goes from 2 to 16, and let's say I roll the dice here. I rolled an 11. So according to this, I will draw 2 power cards. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do, is draw 2 extra power cards. And again, I can decide what I want to do with them. I've got a 0 and a 10 here. 10's a very powerful card, so I'll put him under Randy again, and I'll hold on to the 0 in my hand. There's other things that can happen. You can receive spaceships. Your character can escape if he gets captured. I'll talk about that in a little bit. You can lose spaceships. There's a whole bunch of things that can happen here. The third thing is that you're going to build spaceships. Now the way spaceships are built is if you own one of these corners here. You will also receive 3 spaceships for each merchant that you control. Or if you trade in a card in your hand to get some spaceships. So let's say I have a 4 in my hand, I can go ahead and get 4 spaceships in my hand. So let's say I turn this in and I grab 4 spaceships. And you can do anything you want to with these spaceships when they're here. You can put them down here to use at a later turn. You can disperse them however you need to. Okay, the fourth thing is move members of your alliance. So I went over this a little bit. The next thing is move a shadow. That's the 5th thing. The only way, again, you can move a shadow is if a shadow has spaceships and has been unlocked. And you can move him 1 space away from where he is at, like so. The ShadowLord does not move. And the last thing you need to do is, and the last thing is fight. And fighting has a whole order all its own, and I'll go over that too. So let's say I've got Randy over here, and I move Randy over to Astrid here, and I decide to attack Astrid. Now the way it's going to work is like this. Randy has 2 power cards underneath him that I can go ahead and decide to use to attack. So I've got a 10 and a, you can't see it, I got a 10 and a 4. So I'm going to go ahead and play the 10 as part of my attack. What that does is that increases my power, which is, I have a 6, plus the 2 spaceships, which is 8, and then the 10, which makes it 18. Now Astrid, let's say Astrid has a power card underneath him, and he has a 2. So Astrid's going to go ahead and play this 2. Astrid now has 6 plus the 2 spaceships plus 2 again, which he basically now has 10. Now you can also call in reinforcements if you'd like to, as long as you can get them there per the movement rules. When that happens, basically what's going to happen is you're going to place all of your discs on one side, the opponent's disc on another side, and you're going to basically face off one at a time with each other. We've already determined that Randy here has 18 points, Astrid has 10. So the next thing that's going to happen is both sides are going to draw yet another power card. Let's say Randy draws a 4. That gets him up to 22. Astrid gets a 7. That gets him up to 17. So Randy is going to win the battle because he has more points than Astrid does. So now what happens is that another power card is drawn to determine how many spaceships Astrid loses. 7 is rolled. What happens in this case is Astrid is going to lose both of his spaceships, that's 2, and the winner is going to lose the difference of whatever the card is, since I have a 7. So Randy is also going to lose both of his spaceships. But since I have 1, I'm going to go ahead and place my disc over Astrid. That shows that I have captured him. Now, if I want to get my character back, then another person from the Yellow Alliance is going to have to defeat Randy. You can also get this ship set free if he escapes, and there's a couple of ways that happens. Okay, now when you fight a shadow, it's just a little bit different. Let's say I have Randy over here and he's reached count 1 spot. The same rules of battle apply. The player defeats the shadow, he's going to receive the same amount of ships that the shadow has. So in this case, I'll receive 4 spaceships, and then the character will be then removed from the game. If you decide to battle the ShadowLord with all your characters, let's say I have him, and him, or something like that, what you're going to have to do, and you can actually also call people to help you out with fighting the shadow, your opponents. You're going to have to basically fight every single one of these guys. And so the way it happens is that everybody will go into a line of some kind, and then you'll basically get to pick which shadow you're going to fight. So Axel would fight, say he fights him, that gets resolved, Randy fights him, that gets resolved, etc. There's one other thing I forgot to talk about, and that's the Power Stone. If you're going to be fighting the ShadowLord, each one of these guys are going to have an opportunity to use the Power Stone. Now the Power Stone is basically used to attack your opponent's spaceships before they get a chance to battle. So what happens is each of these guys are going to roll, you're going to roll the dice against each of the shadows here, and if the shadow ends up winning, they'll be able to use the Power Stone during their battle. So if I'm fighting Randy, for example, and he has a chance to use the Power Stone, he will be able to decide whether he wants to draw a card or roll a die to see how many spaceships he's going to lose. So let's say he rolls a 7. I'm going to end up losing a spaceship, which takes my power down, and then battle will resume between these two. But again, each of these guys are going to have to roll for use of the Power Stone. And let's say Randy here is down to battling the ShadowLord, and it's just between those two. Let's say Randy defeats the ShadowLord. Here's what's going to happen. Every single one of the shadows are going to be removed from the game, even the ones that are all the way over there. If a shadow has captured a player, such as this, then that shadow is going to be removed and the player will be set free. Randy, by defeating the ShadowLord, will receive the Power Stone. So now Randy will be able to use the Power Stone during battle in the same way that the ShadowLord did. So if Randy's over here, he's fighting somebody, he can roll for use of the Power Stone to try to get rid of Astrid's spaceships. He'll also be able to teleport back to the home planet like so. That's another option that he'll be able to have. Now, if Randy loses to the ShadowLord, then the ShadowLord is going to possess the stone. Any spaceships that he has lost, you're going to draw to replenish whatever spaceships he has. And then every single one of the shadows that are captured are going to return to the fortress without spaceships. So that's basically how the battling of the shadows work. There's a couple other things I want to talk about. The diplomats. If a diplomat is in a spot, like so, it's basically a neutral zone. So nobody is allowed to fight in the spot that he is in. I believe that like people who are enemies can go ahead and sit through here, but they're just not able to fight. Now, if there's an opposing diplomat on this spot, like so, say Ola's over here, then this part is negated and you can still battle other players in this galaxy. Another thing that happens is voting. If you're playing with more than 2 players, when you're moving a shadow minion, for example, all of the players will get to vote on whether your suggested move can occur. So let's say I want to move him here, and everybody will get to vote. If one yes vote passes, then he will get to move over there. If it's a no, then he'll just go back to where he was. There's some other couple of places you can vote on throughout the game, but a lot of this game is about trying to, basically the object of this game is you're trying to strategize to where you can win the game, but you have to also work with people sometimes to try to defeat the ShadowLord to make sure the ShadowLord doesn't win the game. And if you are able to defeat all of your opponents, then you will win the game and be the ruler of the galaxy. And those are the basics of playing ShadowLord. I probably missed a couple of details. If so, please let me know and I can go ahead and add it. But this is basically how you play the game ShadowLord.